Harambe YouTube, it's Charles here with another edition of Comics and Talk, where I bag up some comic books, namely these comic books I got from my buddy Steve. He gave me two long boxes I got to sort through, mostly from the 90s, some from the 2000s, and I just talk a little bit. About anything really, from comics to life, to music, listen to some jazz, and it's a longer form video. The concert tonight is off of YouTube. It's Connie Hahn live from St. Louis from about 3 years ago. If you don't know, Connie Hahn is an American jazz pianist, brilliant. And I wouldn't know how to describe her. I guess I described it as New York jazz. You know, straight swinging stuff. But I got my popcorn. And much like when you're dealing with musical instruments, when you're handling comic books and you're eating a butter or greasy food, keep a paper towel with you, damp or whatever. But just something that you can wipe your hands on. You don't want that residue getting on your comic books or your musical instruments. I learned that in college. Back around 2000, 2001, I was majoring in guitar, classical, and jazz. I did not keep up with the classical stuff. It was never really my bag. It was just, for me, I saw it as an entry into getting guitar basics down. Let's get into it. We got a bunch to bag tonight. Starting off with Spider-Man and X Factor number 3. This is in good condition here. Let's see what year we're dealing with. 1994. This is from Marvel. But I saw classical guitar as a way for me to get the basics down because, like a lot of guitarists, I was self-taught. And with being self-taught, you know, I had a Mel Bay chord glossary, so I knew chords, shapes, but I didn't know how to spell chords. I didn't have technique in my right or left hand. I didn't even hold a guitar properly. And so, you know, when I started playing classical, it was a way for me to learn how to read music, learn how to apply music theory, and really get my technique hammered in. And really, I think after college, it just lost its utility because while I am still a fan of classical, I'm not going to listen to Bach. You know, I occasionally put on some Giuseppe Verdi or something, but it's not really my bag. I got really more into the jazz and rock side of things. Spider-Man and the X Factor number 2. Okay, so we got some sequential books going on here. That was number 3. It's in good shape as well. And then I actually ended up discovering bass. We got this old pulpy paper that really dates the book to the early 90s, 80s. But when I was in college for guitar, my guitar teacher had found out that I played a little bass at church. And by playing a little bass means I picked up one and messed around with it occasionally. The guy played maybe 2 or 3 services on a bass. Somewhat okay. Now it says part 3 of a 3-part series, so let's see if we have number 1 in here somewhere. But, you know, that little bass experience convinced him to get me some lessons on an upright bass. So that's what I did in college. I studied classical and jazz guitar and took upright bass lessons, played upright bass in the jazz combo, and I shared duty in the big band. In the big band is where I really got to stretch out my abilities because I played. The first year I was the backup guitarist and bassist for the big band, and I was a full-time bassist in one of the jazz combos. And then my second year in big band, I was the co-guitarist, co-bassist, and me and my buddy Aaron, who I still play with to this day as a matter of fact, we shared duty on drums. And so that was a real interesting year, and it was cool because Aaron, he was a little bit younger than me, but far more advanced as far as jazz goes. You got X-Men Prime. Looks like you got Bishop on the cover. This has a bag. I don't like the bag though. It's very loose. I might repurpose it for some bigger graphic novels. But I don't like my books bouncing around in the bag. And this is a great cover. It is translucent cover. Goes front to back, covers 2 pages. X-Men Prime, special event. I love this from 1995. This is going to go in my immediate read pile. But yeah, that's right. Like I said, I met my buddy Aaron, and we still play together to this day. And he taught me a lot, because my guitar teacher, he wasn't the type to sit down and show you chords. He taught you how to spell chords and how to discover chords, but he didn't teach you a lot of physical guitar as far as jazz went. And so with Aaron, I got to sit down next to him and learn how he voiced chords and different things he did as a jazz guitarist stylistically that I carry with me to this day. And then on drums, we were about, as far as technique goes, I'd say we were pretty much neck and neck as far as drumming goes, but he was more experienced in jazz drumming. We got Weapon X, June 4. This is a great condition comic book. You see no tears, no bends. The cover is still very shiny. Love this art. And then on bass, the bassist I shared duty with, she's actually a nurse now. Last time I saw her, I was coming out of knee surgery and half out of it. But yeah, she was a character. I will say that we had our issues because she really, I don't, and it's not a knock on her. I just don't think that she was as passionate about jazz and bass as I was. This is X Factor, June 1st. Looks like the same book, might be a different variant cover. June 4th, and yep, same book, different cover. But yeah, back then I was as pretentious as a young man could be, thinking that I was a jazz master in the making. And so I kind of gave her a hard time about the stylistic stuff. But I I think it was just juvenile pettiness and aloofness on my part. I mean, outside of, she had terrible rhythm, but I mean, if I would have humbled myself, I could have learned some things from her as far as music reading and theory goes, and maybe I could have taught her some stuff about rhythm and stylistic stuff that I was more hip on. But you live and you learn. If I was gonna, be in a situation like that again, I wouldn't approach another musician. I to this day, I don't approach music as competition anymore. If I come across a musician that may not be as experienced as me, I won't say as good, because that's in the eye of the beholder. But if they're not experienced with me, I'm going to sit with them and get them hip to what I know that they may not know. And if they're more experienced with me, then I want to sit and I want to watch everything they do and try to add everything that I did that they're doing to what I do. And so, we're talking about jazz in my college. Yeah, another variant cover of this book. Can't be the same book, can it? I think it is. Oh, okay. You know what? I made a mistake. These aren't the same book. These aren't variants. They're all from June 4th, and it looks like they're part of some event or series after Xavier, the Age of Apocalypse. Oh! So we got Factor X, Weapon X, Excalibur. Okay. So things are getting interesting here with this collection, aren't they? And they're all in great condition. Now, the X-Men Prime is not part of this series. Yeah, it looks like a whole X-Men event. Here we got Gambit and the Externals from June 4th. Part of the After Xavier Age of Apocalypse. This one's in good condition. I mean, there's a little bit of bending on the cover, but nothing really out of shape. And like I said, with all of these, when I look at a used comic, I'm not like a lot of people that want something pristine and perfect. If it has dents, if it has slight tears, bends, it just means it was read and enjoyed. And in my opinion, that's what these are for. And in my collection, I don't keep action figures in the box, and I don't slab comic books. You know, these aren't investments for me. These are decoration, entertainment. For action figures, especially, they can be reminders of times I've had with friends. Like, one of my favorite action figures is a WWE Basic Braun Strowman action figure. And it was my nephew back a couple years ago. No, actually, no, it's probably about 7, 8 years ago. I took him to a WWE event, and it was cool. We had a great time, and I actually got pictures of us on the floor of the WWE event, and I got him a copy framed up with the ticket stub in there, and got me an identical one with my ticket stub in there, so it's a reminder of that day. And then that Christmas, he ended up getting me a Braun Strowman action figure because he remembered how excited I was to see him. So things like that, you know, all of these action figures, you know, they have a story, be it when I discovered, you know, them on TV, or memories watching wrestling with fans, with friends, so on and so forth. And so that's where I find value in comics and in action figures. Okay, Gambit and the Externals. This is from May 3rd. Also part of the After Xavier Age of Apocalypse. But yeah, one thing I find interesting about this collection that Steve got me is some of this stuff is well read and beat up. And then there's other stuff that you could tell he valued but is in pristine condition, even if it's not in bags with boards like these guys are. Generation Next, May 3rd, part of that After Xavier Age of Apocalypse. If you're wondering, the comic book bags, what are they called? I forgot what they're called. But they're $10 on Walmart.com. If you look up comic bags from Modern Comics, BCW, that's what they're called. BCW comic bags. And the cool thing about these comic book bags right here is that you slide them in, and usually you would tuck this in. But what you can do is you can take the strip off right here, and it has adhesive. So you can simply fold it back. Okay, you got your comic book sealed up here, and then you want to read it, boom. Pops open, real easy, seals right back up. And I can tell you from experience because everything that that I buy, I read and I keep, and I've opened these things up again and again, and they last for the long haul. So you got Weapon X from May 3rd, still in this After Xavier Age of Apocalypse series. But yeah, that's one thing I learned in college about music is it really shaped how I deal with people and interact with people, and it taught me a lot of humility. Um, Another thing it taught me too is that a lot of the cats that you think would be big-headed and mean are the nicest people you meet, and the meanest cats you meet are usually mad and insecure. And I played with a lot of different people, a lot of different levels of musicianship. We have Excalibur from May 3rd, part of that same series. But I can tell you, I played with guitars that were brilliant, yet they were real territorial. Even though there were, most bands I've been in, I've been on bass. But it's no secret that I played guitar. And in a couple of bands, that was actually an issue because the guitarists would get very territorial and self-conscious because they felt like I was trying to take their part. And that ain't me at all. I was a bass player, happy to be doing my job, but if there's something I can get somebody hip to, I want to. But because I was a guitar player, they refused to learn from me because I was a fellow guitarist. Yeah, X-Men, Wolverine. Okay, this is not part of that overarching series. This is from January 19. January, is it 1989 or number 89? I think it's number 89. Yeah, this is from 1995. So this is number 89 of Wolverine, Marvel Comics. We got a little blunting on the cover there, but that's still a good looking cover. I love that action shot. You can see the stubble on Wolverine's face there. But there was one band I was in, one of my first bands. We had a guitarist that was kind of awful. He knew very little about guitar. And if I were to critique his playing, I could say objectively, it was awful. But he was the easiest guitarist to work with because it wasn't a thing about pride. It was about just he knew that I was on the team. I was the drummer at the time, and I was also writing most of the songs. So I would sit down and show him the part that I wrote and show him how I got there, how to play it, the notes and the chords, and get him hip. And it was like he never asked questions, but he never had ego. He just did what I showed him and practiced it and got better and better to the point to where I didn't have to show him everything very fast. See, we got Wolverine, July, X-Men Deluxe. This is a weird cover. It's kind of like a mirror reflection here. Interesting. But yeah, his name was Matt. I ain't played with him in over 25 years, but still one of my favorite people to ever play with. And then we got Wolverine from October. Yeah, this one's a little bit beat up. The binding is real bent. They're going to have a little bit of fragility there, but it's still a decent looking cover. It's not pristine, but it's in good reading condition. I have to be a little bit more tender with it than the rest of the book. But yeah, as far as then after college, while we're talking about music, I quit playing guitar for the most part and really focused in on drums and bass. It's because my guitar teacher was brilliant, but he was also very intense, and it made guitar not as fun for me. You have Cable, Enter Blacksmith. It's from July. And with the bass, really didn't have any other basses up at the college when I was there, other than that nurse. And drums, I was the low end of the totem pole, so I really wasn't any competition. Because I was the bottom guy in the whole program. I wasn't even taking drum lessons. I was self-taught. And so those were still fun for me. So that's why I played drums a lot in church, bass at the local blues and jazz society jam sessions. Played in bands here or there. And then got a job teaching youth music at a church. Yeah. Cable, August. And that was a cool job because, it was at a big church, bigger than I was used to, and a lot more formal than I was used to. Look at this cover. Love that action. He's jumping up in the air with the sword. Because it was a bunch of classical musicians on staff that did traditional choir music. But what they wanted me for was a contemporary group. And so I was kind of the odd guy out, being the only black person in the church, really, and the only person that wasn't, classically trained, classically minded. I was classically trained, but it wasn't where my focus was. It wasn't what I was brought in to do. I always laugh when I think about the church directory. Cable, Future Shock. I like this. We got the full cover, folds out into, whoa, look at this cover. We got 4 pages. It opens up to 4 pages. How awesome is that? Oh my goodness, this is so cool. I lost track of what I was doing here. That is a great cover. Cable Future Shock. And I love the full cover as well. Wow. But yeah, you look at the church directory, and it's a bunch of older white people, and then I was in the corner with the contemporary group teaching kids music. And it was interesting because I remember my first day, I was brought in to meet the kids that were going to be in my contemporary band, and we had about maybe 25 kids. And we had 3 or 4 guitarists, a couple of kids that I was going to teach bass, a few kids I had to teach drums, and a whole bunch of pianists that couldn't read chord charts. They only read sheet music. And a bunch of woodwind instrument players. A bunch of the woodwind and other players, I incorporated them into, I wrote out parts for them to play, but I tried to get them on instruments like piano and drums. And it was very successful with that because, they had lessons their whole lives on different instruments and they had an understanding of music. So with the drummers, all I had to do was teach them the physicality of the drums, and they already understood the musicality aspect of it. And as far as piano, they've been playing piano, reading music, a lot more than I did. And so for me, it was just about reminding them of that theory training they had and getting them to use that to figure out how to play chords. They knew that, a G scale was G, A, B, D, or G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, but they didn't know that a G chord was G, B, D. And if you want to make it a, major 7, G, B, D, F sharp, dominant 7, G, B, D, F, so on and so forth. So my job for them was to get them hip to the music theory. They got Sabretooth. We got a full cover here. It's from Marvel. Again, another 2-page cover. I did that for a couple of years, and after that, I started playing locally on the music scene, the bar scene, playing on the weekends with various groups, and the money wasn't great, but it was nice, a little extra change. And then when I got injured and put out of the regular workforce, that's when I really focused in on making music a means of making money. And so, yeah, X-Men. Okay, yeah, this is the one I set aside to read later. Yeah, Cable. Then we got Force and Cable 95, still from Marvel. A lot of these books have these big two-page covers. That must have been a big stylistic thing in the mid 90s. But yeah, after I got hurt, I couldn't do the job I got hurt at, and every job that I applied for, it seemed like the combination of my ability and age and other factors just didn't seem to add up to something that folks really wanted to employ. So that's when I started playing out the bars, and it was a good time. I had quit drinking by then, so it was a little bit weird being the only sober person in a bar, but I had a stage that kept me separate from a lot of riffraff. Yeah, my concert shut off on me. See, we got the New Mutants. This looks like a little bit older one. It's called In the Spider Lair. Interesting. And this is from 1988. Yeah, you could tell. If you get a look at the inside, like I could tell from this very thin cover here, that we're dealing with something from the 80s. And then we got the real pulpy paper on the inside. And it has some scuffs on it. And a little bit of wear and tear. It's been well appreciated. But yeah, you meet some characters playing in bars, and it's really where I learned how to appreciate music. Um, One story that I tell all the time because it really changed me as a musician and as a person. I was playing out at this bar. Me and the guys playing with Jim. We had a regular gig out of this bar in this place on the outskirts called Mills. And the bar, I'm going to be honest with you, to call the bar a shithole would be an insult to shitholes. It was under construction at the time, but they had all the business in the basement for some reason. I think they were still working on the upstairs. And it was in the middle of the winter when we were playing there, and they had a stage set up right next to the bathroom. And I remember in between me and Jim, right behind the stage, was an open sewage pipe. And there was sludge that I will convince myself was mud that was coming down in between me and Jim as we were playing. And yeah, it didn't smell like mud. But I'm just gonna comfort myself that it was mud. But anyway, back to the story about the night to change my whole perspective. We were playing at this crappy bar, and during one of our breaks, a lady comes up to us, and she was just had the biggest smile on her face and tears in her eyes. And I was like, oh man, it's gonna be another drunk person wanting to cry on her shoulder. But I could tell that she wasn't drunk. We got the supersized annual, The New Mutants, 64 pages. This is definitely from the 80s. You can see some creasing in the cover. And thick, we got the pulpy paper. I'm gonna have to handle this with care. This is from what year? 1988. But she came up to me and Jim and she said, "Thank you so much." And she said that I came up here from Louisiana. My uncle, he died, and we're up here for the funeral. And I've done nothing but cry since the moment I found out I lost my uncle. And when you guys were playing, I wasn't thinking about my uncle being gone. I was thinking about the music. And you guys made me smile for the first time since my uncle died. And then that's when I realized that, I was sitting there being upset about, the pay was good, but it wasn't as much as I wanted to be. And it wasn't a big stage, and there wasn't a lot of people. And like I said, you had that pipe with the mud directly behind me and Jim. But that was some of the most important work I did as a musician to this day. And I played for one person, and I played for over 1,000. But that night, yeah, that was it. That's what it was about. We got 2099 sketchbook. Okay, yeah, it looks like we have mock-ups of different Marvel characters. Interesting. Got the pulpy paper, the thin cover here. I would say this is from maybe 1989. Let's see how close I am. I'm still figuring out how to judge these things. I'm a relatively new reader. I started back in 2019. I cannot find a date on this. Well, yeah, that's what it's about, in life or music. It's about appreciating moments, not taking for granted anytime you have the ability to make somebody smile. Because that's what we're put here for. And with this channel, yeah, I'm not seeing a date here, but with this YouTube channel, I want to share this hobby that got me through so many tough times. From my injury to learning how to cope as a disabled person, getting disabled at the age of 30 and going through the highs and lows of depression and mental and physical ailments, comic books, action figure collecting, connecting with the community. These were all things that really helped get me to the point where I am now. And I figure, I can't go work at a store like I used to, and I don't have the gig opportunities that I would like nowadays. So what can I do? I can share what put a smile on my face. I'm buying, I'm reading them anyway, so I might as well get some good out of them the best way I can. And I think that's sharing this hobby that means so much to me. Okay, here's another 2099 book. This is Doom 2099, and it is from 1991. It's a foil cover. Nice. This is a number one issue too. And so we got a couple of 2099 books here. I think I'll get through these and then call it a wrap on this video. And continue in the next one. Looks like we got some X-Men coming up. Don't want to keep you guys too long. Yeah, this is very, very interesting. Punisher. $20.99. Number one from Marvel Comics. We got an advertisement for Fleer basketball cards on the back with Scottie Pippen on the back. There is a little yellowing on the cover here, but it's in otherwise pretty good shape. We got some blending here, a little bit. Yeah, the inside of it looks great. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap this up. And that's what we got thus far tonight. Getting bagged up from this collection gifted to me from my friend Steve. If you're watching, hey Steve. So let's take a little quick inventory of what we got through. Yeah, we got the Spider-Man books with the X Factor. Then we got a whole bunch of those After Xavier Age of Apocalypse books. A lot of X-Men stuff. And definitely some that are sticking out to me are the Punisher $20.99 and this one right here, this X-Men Prime with Bishop and Wolverine on the cover. So I will see you guys next time. Tune in for the other part of this video. Like I said, I'm going to continue bagging them up here, but I'm going to say goodbye for now. You guys keep reading them books. Keep spreading positive energy. Have a blessed Friday night, and I will see you next time.